Call to the order. And of the nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Warner.
Here.
Mr. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Green. Here. Mr. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Miller. Here. Mr. Paris.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Right, I don't. Public comments, I don't think there's anybody here. Kevin?
There's Mr. Simons and Mr. Wood are on, but I think they're just here for agenda items. Unless they want to speak.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the May 9th, May 25th, and May 31st meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 9th, 2023 regular meeting, May 5th, 2023 special budget meeting, and the May 31st, 2023 special budget meeting.
Second,
Sorry.
discussion, changes. Those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. A motion on item F1.
Move to transfer $981, $662,113.56 as detailed on the accompanying spreadsheets to cover higher than budgeted expenditures in the identified accounts.
So a second. Second. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Item F2.
Move to approve the transfers of $10,000 from storm-related overtime to auto parts to cover further expenditures within the auto parts account for the remainder of fiscal year 2023.
So second.
Second.
Discussion.
Is that enough?
Martin?
Is 10,000 enough?
It should be. I mean, Jim is on the line. Jim, do you have a comment on whether that's sufficient?
Yeah, that should be sufficient. Currently, we have probably about $3,000 there, and we probably have another 4,000 in invoices, so we'll be all set. We only have 2 weeks left.
Those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Move to approve the transfer of $30,000 from the irrigation account, Veterans Commission Department, General Fund, the irrigation system account, public grounds department. account, non-recurring.
For a second.
Second.
Discussion.
Having this is just because we're not ready to spend the money, or
It is, when the project began, Steve's on to give more details. Basically, when the project began, Veterans Park, as you may recall, was remediated probably several years ago. There was an expectation that there was a level of depth of topsoil that would allow for irrigation. That level of depth wasn't sufficient. So we would actually, if we went with traditional, penetrate the cap. So the town went back to DEEP requesting approval to do that or an alternative. We haven't heard back from DEEP. So this is to make sure we keep money aside and it's to provide irrigation for the whole Veterans Park area and the statewide monument that is out there. Woody, I don't know if you have anything to add or.
Yeah, that pretty much covers everything. We heard back from the state just after the last council meeting. It's slated for DEP to look at it right around July 15th. So we're hoping to have her answer exactly what we need to do by the end of September or October.
and is this all we have for that irrigation system, 30,000?
We actually have a little over $20,000 that was part of money used to fund the original Veterans Park project that has been actually sitting there since 2009. And so that money will be combined if needed to be able to do that additional work.
Is nothing an option?
It's nothing.
Maybe nothing.
Well, if we did nothing, then you'd have the current status of what's out there. And Steve, you could talk about why they want to do the work here.
Yeah, just because of the amount of money, especially with the Woody Williams Foundation putting up that beautiful monument there, with the amount of geese that are there and how fast it burns out with not having adequate topsoil, not having good soil conditions, it just makes it very unpleasant. And when we have the Navy band come, instead of showcasing something, we're showcasing a burnt out park. It's not very appealing, and we like to host other things there as well. And I think we do a great job of beautifying it, adding some different flowers, some different color, and making it a beautiful park for at least three out of the 4 seasons.
Did you say we have money sitting since 2009? Thought our capital project charter provision said 3 years. Lapses.
This was donation money, so we can't really move it. It was way back when the Veterans Park was originally being pulled together. It was put into a Farmington Ave Veterans Park remediation fund that has been sitting there. And the intent would be to use the money combined to make sure we can get all this done.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Move to appropriate a $62,640 CDN grant to the CDN grant account on full execution of grant date.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Move to appropriate $4,000 Youth Service Bureau grant to the youth grant expenditure.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Move to deposit a $5,000 Amplify grant to the state opioid response grant revenue. Appropriate grant to the state opioid response grant expense account. All paperwork was executed.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Move to appropriate $3,421 state of Connecticut Youth Service Bureau grant expenditure.
Second,
Second.
discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Move to accept the suspense list of $135,118.13 as detailed.
Second.
Discussion?
Second question, what happens to this? It's written off, turn it over to collection agencies, sold to a collection agency.
This will continue through the normal collection process. This, I would characterize, Jerry, maybe you have a different way of doing it. It's more of an accounting exercise. For purposes of presentation on the ACFA, but we continue to collect on it. If you were to look at the revenue reports that I send out every single month, there's a line that would show means, warrants, suspense, et cetera. So money is in there. We actually have collected about $86,000 from business that had been put into suspense. By statute, this is done every year. And the tax collector has the discretion of whether you go back a year, 2 years, 3 years, but they go back through the same period. So we do continue to collect. Characterize it differently than what accounting exercise.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is sometimes it's the tiny amounts. Below $5, that the state statutes allow you to waive. In other cases, it's things that are not likely to be collected, but they're not gonna put their main efforts into collecting this stuff, but things happen. Sometimes when new business comes along, an old business check pops up, you get some collection. But yeah, it's more accounting.
The reason I asked, one caught my eye, Kokomo Brothers is in here for $1,600, it does business all the time. Constantly got new proposals coming in, going to PNC all the time.
Probably has a lot of good.
Yeah, the challenge with the ordinance is it has to be under the corporation. However, unfortunately, it ends up on the list for taxes more than periodically. When that happens, we go back through all the records, including what's on suspense, and in order for him to retain whatever property is on there, he has to clear all of this up. So that's part of the reason it stays on the books, but it's kind of viewed almost like a preserve, so that if somebody in San Francisco is thinking of a pension fund, thinking of buying our bonds, and they look at our financials, they realize this is old.
This is really just for personal property.
Okay.
They don't suspend real estate.
Those in favor?
Are there any penalties? Like, is there like an interest rate penalty, like a 10% or something like that, year over year? Or is it
It
not?
will continue to be charged on the 1.5% per month interest, so that just continues to grow.
For our financial statements, it's not carried as a receivable.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Move.
Just a couple of quick updates. The police department is actually making some good progress on hiring. So they brought 2 more people in. They are looking pretty good at potentially bringing in a lateral, and if they succeed with that, that would be officer number 43. You'll recall when the budget was adopted, it was funded to 42, with the approval to go as high as 46. Funding wasn't in there, so we talked about letting the year kind of play out and as it went along, figuring out whether there was savings elsewhere or whether there was a balance. So just wanted to give you an update that they are making progress. The council is expecting to vote on the pension next Tuesday, expecting to adopt it. If that does happen, that also will likely help, should help quite a bit with the recruiting process. Chief, I spoke to the chief last week after some dispatch negotiations. He said that they've changed some things up, and he thinks with the good press they're getting for the pensions, some other things, bringing Berlin in competition with the surrounding communities, they are seeing some better candidates, and that can help them. And we were losing a lot of good candidates after the interview process and back check any number of reasons. So we'll keep an eye on that and then probably revisit, assuming you can get seats in the academy and they have the candidates, we may get to 46 sometime during the fiscal year and we'll address that.
So how many officers would be on patrol on a given shift?
I believe it would bump to, I don't know exactly, I think it would add 1 to each shift was the intent.
They're running a sergeant, 3 officers right now would be the way they should.
And then they're trying to
Seal 4 officers run. But they're
This is still so light, and I'm not saying we're a crime-ridden community, we have to clear that, but if kid kills himself on the train track, there's 3 cops there. Therefore, the rest of the town has none.
well, they're supplementing
that's
this
basically-
Like the
yeah.
Chamberlain Highway to, I mean, it's,
You're basically correct, a car accident will tie up the whole PD. But it's been that way, it's like that in any small town, it's been that way for this town for 50 years.
They are supplementing
They
these.
say, somebody will clear as fast as they can to get back. It's really not that unusual. Having 4 guys on is a big step, was a 25% increase. So that's a big step right there.
So I want to let you guys know about that. The financial results are coming in pretty strong. Revenue is very strong, predominantly again with interest earnings, as well as some tax revenue. And then you'll recall in the budget for FY23 was adopted, there was uncertainty around the motor vehicle cap, so that was not included in the budget. So that did come through at about $370,000. So that also adds to this year's surplus. We are expecting money, and it was included in the adopted budget for next year, but that was actually in the budget, so that won't represent that what was in the budget. We continue to have, I have a few more over budget items that will be processed through the council on the 20th and back to you, July. A couple of departments are actively working to look at their surplus and determine there are some critical needs that they can deal with by doing some transfers. And those will be coming back through you guys as well. Our projects are beginning to pick up. Probably all seen orders passed and all the work done on the 3 road project there. HVAC project will begin to kick in now that the school is completed. As the teachers leave Willard. They're also planning to start work and work through the summer for fire alarm upgrades at the last 2 schools in town, which is Willard and Griswold. Hopefully those will get done, and then that would mean upgrades in recent years, which gets the thumbs up from the fire marshal. So should be in good shape with all of that. And then Steve is on if you have any questions about a couple of the other projects, which obviously are the Skyview and Personal Field. Those projects will kick in, make for a busy summer for rounds, Steve in particular. But I think we're in good shape on a lot of those pieces. Hopefully you guys have had an opportunity to see some of the sidewalk upgrades that are done by Pine Villard as well as up at Langdon. There is an effort to pursue another state grant, potentially a few more roads and continue that. And Mike Ahern is working actively on potentially 2 more lots of grants, like the 3 road project, those are actually pre-funded by the state, the 10% contingency and the 10% for incidental, so it's a fantastic grant program, not just covering it, but pre-funding it. So he's actively working on some of that, he's trying to work through Burnham Street. You'll recall when the bridge was replaced there was paving work done up to it, there's a whole section up to Farmington Ave, which kind of looks really funny now that Farmington Ave was redone. But a few other spots in town.
They did that sidewalk in like 2 days. It was insane how fast they did that.
Yeah.
So is there a contract with the road HVAC in place? Yeah.
For the construction, yeah.
Big contract.
Council approved and going forward with that as well as construction management.
Because you know, when we presented the budget for, you gave us a breakdown on each fact for the other 2 schools.
Yep.
In my mind, it was $1 million project management, each contract, for each item. That seems a lot.
That was actually reduced substantially. Council reduced that by $400,000. So it went from it's about $400,000 reduction. That $400,000 was because if the town won both of those 2 grants, that money was intended to be design and assist in the bidding and the initial selection, scheduling of the other 2 schools. Once the town did not win the state grant, that was reduced down and taken out of the project. Right now, the project all up is expected to take the entire ARPA money as well as a little bit more that was appropriated in the town, but Willard's obviously a large school. It's everything in there is pretty old in terms of like HVAC and stuff. So it'll also give us a good idea for the other 2 schools.
So they didn't get any grant money at all. There was a second increment that we were looking for.
They are still actively working with feds, potentially get a Department of Energy. And the board is still, they did get favorable responses, but they didn't get an award, kind of from phase 1 to phase 2, they got some signs and continue to do their work. Willard, we will be using ARPA's predominantly, that we have almost all.
So did the bids come in somewhat where in line with what people thought, or were they way out of line?
No, they were, I think they were largely in line. But it's just an expensive project. And you got 2 years, and then there's obviously the risk as you get down towards the end, especially in the first summer, because that's a lot of tearing out the ceiling and putting everything in. The second part will be a lot more of the connections, the test and use it. So that first summer, which is this summer, there could potentially be some escalated costs related to second shift work if we need to push hard in order for school to start. You remember the security vestibules, they had to find alternative entrances to kind of work around the final stages. This would be more difficult, literally tearing the ceiling out, putting in the ductwork and then placing it. Can't really move the kids around to get in place, so ceiling is fine. So they're gonna watch that very closely, monitor as the sun goes on, to need to be ready.
Where do we stand with police renovation bids?
I actually just asked that question of our purchasing agent, and she has not heard, so I'm following up to find out. We expected that bids would go out in May, award in June, start in July. We are almost completely cleared out downstairs. There's a few items that have to be moved over to, I want to say it's Willard basement, it's one of the school basements that moved some of the stuff, and some of the other things have thrown away in cages. It's pretty much where we need to be as far as clearing out. But as far as the design and what I did, that's still I have to follow up with how.
The other thing is, I'm still hearing that we're still waiting for the grant money from the state. We put a grant requested. How much?
Even 3.9.
So now that the budget is passed, right?
Yeah, I reached out to Donna, and before the bond package was approved, she had seen it in there, it was on the list. When I looked at the final bond package, I searched for Burma, I couldn't find it in there, so I don't know if it made the final cut. I reached out, I haven't heard definitively either way from whether we received that.
She mentioned the other day, Thursday, that it was still in play, she said it was looking good,
And that was, I want to say, I think she and I emailed Tuesday. And final stuff was, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday.
this comment was around.
So
something.
Yeah, I don't see it, but I could have missed it. I just did a PDF search for Berlin, but it could be written in a different way. There was some money included in a DCD grant, a whole bunch of towns that stuff. The town did receive about $250,000 for other items. The last thing I had was the capital improvement list in the budget. You'll see 4 of those items I crossed out. I left them on there, but I crossed out the dollar amount. This should be at the very end of your record. It says state budget. Those items were included in the adopted state budget. So we did get some funding for roof replacement at the senior center. As a reminder, the town operates half of that and senior housing on the other half. So this would be the town portion. A supervisor SUV, but basically a police vehicle. Band room renovations at McGee. That's been on the list for a few years. So that would be nice to be able to that kind of improvement. And then additional modifications at South Kensington Firehouse. You'll recall a few years ago, there was money appropriated, I'd say $150,000 to redo the roof because it's leaking. That will be on the council agenda. I believe this meeting coming up on the 20th to award that bid and hopefully move forward with that. So I was hoping to take a few minutes, we don't have the final surplus. A lot of people are looking to see opportunities where they can make things go, but as we went through the budget process, there's obviously just shy of 2.7 million on this list. First part was the $1,070,000 first section. You heard from a number of folks who came in and spoke. There were different opinions on whether some of these items should be done this year, whether some of these items should be done at all, and whether some of these items should be moved up or down. So as the town starts thinking through what should we do, I was hoping to get feedback from you guys as to how you would prioritize this as we look at the dollars. We're gonna look at the surplus and we're gonna have to figure out if there's nothing in it from the police station. The other question for you is, what are your thoughts on funding? Let's talk about use surplus to do that. Right now, I will tell you that the projection for the surplus, if I were asked right now, I would pay you net at about $3.5 million. Keep in mind, you've got a big number, but we appropriated 2.1 million at the beginning of the year. So from an operating standpoint, that has to run through our financials. State did pass legislation 2 years ago. If you have an operating loss for 2 consecutive years, subject to state review. So we had an operating loss last year because we had over $5 million pension to pay, so we had to take that out. So I would caution against doing that this year. There's some ways we can get around it and appropriate it using FY24 appropriation, which relied on a surplus and sort of reset the clock. Or you could actually appropriate less than 3.5 million. But I would say that the 3.5 million is probably not enough to do the whole police station. Might be close, but then that would basically say don't do anything on the list. You can look at the list and decide a different way of funding the police station, or a combination. So those are kind of 2 things, kind of get your ideas on the capital list and your ideas on funding, how you think we should fund the police station, and that moves forward.
When you presented the budget, you used $1 million. You recommended $1 million surplus for the police station. Bonding. Of course, at that time, we were also looking at the HVAC system for Griswold and Hubbard. Only because it was a grant. And again, by the time you get to Griswold and Hubbard, there's 2 years away where you can start those schools. Because it's 2 years for Willard itself. You're going to have to figure out, somebody should lay out a plan for OA that project for those 3 schools. You kind of look at an incremental approach, whether it's bonding, whether it's when you start, whatever you have to do in order to get there for 3 schools.
Yeah, I'd like to see something that takes our, your full estimate of where we're gonna end this fiscal year, just like you did. We had that page, where you broke it down to say, okay, out of this, these are the projects that need additional funding. This is the equipment that we had as tier 1 equipment. And then it brings us down to this compared to the floor that we're supposed to maintain. I'd like to see something with numbers that helps me think of it more in those terms. I think conceptually though, you know, just from the big picture perspective, I would not be in favor of taking all fund balance for the police department project. I mean, we're doing something that's supposed to last 20 something years. We should be bonding some of it. We haven't been very, very good on bonding for the last couple of years. And I don't see why we would disrupt all this other stuff that we need to do by shorting ourselves with fund balance. And, you know, we've pretty much lived on this life of funding capital out of current year surplus. You know, we have to keep, you can't skip that too. So I mean, there's got to be some chunk of this, whether we fall back to the 1,070,000 or we look at reprioritization because of, you know, some of the playground people or whatever, you know, things that came up during the process. But you know, I'd like to have some. I think we have to say conceptually what we want. But I think for me, I need to see it on paper to see this is, you know, we're planning on coming through this year with 14 million. X is going to be for this, X is going to be for that. And if we decide, no, we don't need $1 million for each of the HVAC projects because it's 2 million or 2 years out or whatever, we can work from that. But I think it's just hard to put all these pieces together conceptually, you know.
The difficulty with the schools, they only done something. So
Yeah.
bids, lag, government approvals between this board and you miss the window, you're a whole nother year out. It has to be done in the summer. That's really tough for planning. I know that kills them. It's difficult. It's
I agree with Jared. We don't want to use surplus for open station. We gotta find some priority capital items that we took out of the budget. The other thing is just going back to the police station. My understanding is that the minority party got a fund balance, lump sum of money they're using for rubber grants. And that some of that may get partial out. That's why you may not see it as a line item. So that's like George says.
It's
throw the dog a bone.
It's a little more
Yeah,
complicated.
so what George says though, you know, Don was talking, you know, I mean, I don't know, 50-50 or whatever, she's talking, we don't know.
Yep.
The other thing is I have a question for you, Kevin. Associated with the FY24 budget, which should be considered as a plus up. Last night's budget meeting, the Board of Education said they used 8% for health insurance. As opposed to 10%. 8. So they should 8%. So I guess what's the impact on the town side as far as how much could we save? How much does that look up on the town? You don't have to do it now, Kevin, but at least give it to us as part of the next meeting.
But I have a related question to that. Because if we knew about that change in percentage prior to setting the mill rate, could we have taken that into consideration, setting the mill rate?
Sure. I mean, you could set the mill rate in.
But even if we set the mill rate and it reduces the amount of taxes, doesn't that run afoul of the state law that says we have to have a balanced budget?
Well, I mean, your mill rate's independent, your budget is balanced.
Well, our revenue estimate would be going down, basically, right? We would, if we were reducing the mill rate, our revenue budget would be reduced.
Well, your adopted budget is balanced. You just expect that year end to be used to fund balance. At the end of the year, your fund balance.
So,
At the end of the year, your
So
budget
you're-
is balanced.
so you're saying our revenue number for property taxes would not be reduced, even though the mill rate could not generate.
Your actuals would you, but I can promise you, just like any budget I've done for 40 years, when it's done, I can guarantee you it's wrong.
Oh, no, no,
I can guarantee you it's wrong.
what I'm trying to get to is, you know, when you say we could set the mill rate to anything we want, I mean, I suppose that's theoretically true, but not practically true.
It's not advisable, but you can do it.
So you're saying we could have, if we knew it, that if there was $1 million savings there, that we could have adjusted the mill rate to something to generate $1 million less in property taxes.
We got down to that flat number.
You had this debate last year, but the vehicle cap and the uncertainty, where would it fall and what would the grant be? And if you recall, you elected to say, we're gonna adopt this regardless of what happens with the motor vehicle cap. And we will assume responsibility if we fall short, that'll be fund balance. You were willing to take that on. Knowing that there was likely going to be something, but you didn't know what it was.
So if it worked the other way, and there was some big expenditure that we saw from the time that the budget was, could we do it the other way? Could we increase the mill rate?
You could have said, we're not gonna do 29.56, we're gonna do a mill rate of 40 if you wanted to.
You can
I'm
change
not
the
sure
mill
what
rate during the year.
decision.
You can change the mill rate during the year too.
You can, it's
It's just not.
it would be extremely difficult to execute because if you lowered it, we could adjust if you did it before January and send out revised bills. If you
I'm not
increase,
saying it would be popular,
yeah,
but it's feasible.
Yeah.
In the case of a disaster.
it's not, it would be advisable to follow the math like you guys did and just say, this is what the budget tells us. Because you know with certainty that that number is not going to generate what you need. It may generate more than what you need, but it's not going to generate the exact amount of budget.
But when did that 10% become 8%? Were we still in the budget process when that happened?
Trying to think of when that was.
Because I don't remember being told about that.
No, I mean, it was late, very late. It's always very late in the process.
Yeah, but we usually know before we finish our budget process. And every year for the last several years that I've been involved, we know that it's changed prior to us making any decisions on the final mill rate.
Yeah.
So, so I'd like to know exactly when that was available, because we were, maybe before the second referendum, we may have said something different, for the Board of Education, for example. I'd just like to know exactly when that information is available.
I agree
What-
with 100%.
What was that number? How much did that affect it?
I don't have that number
Okay.
on me, what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they said 8, because it's actually 8.5%.
It's the best estimate.
I have two questions. Doesn't the council decide on what capital projects they're gonna do? On this list?
Well, so it's in 2 parts. In the budget, they decided not to do anything.
Understood.
When it comes to now circling back, they will be the first ones, if they don't say yes, it wouldn't get to you guys. You could ultimately veto it if they said, yeah, we think we should do that, and you say, no, that's a bad idea. I usually start with you because you're looking at the whole financial picture, and it's, the council usually asks, is the Board of Finance okay moving this money around? Just because they don't get into a lot of the financial, you see every month.
Second question, station. So is the intent now with the bids that are out, that's the whole project, or is there still phase 2 and 3?
First, well, I can take that back. There is a project, there were 3 phases. Essentially, what was phase 1 is the project. The intent is to complete that project and then reassess at a later time what, if anything, would be a future project or projects. In other words, they're not. So you would say, hey, there's more they'd like to do, but the project itself is going to be much narrower than all this. If you think about basically all downstairs, You're gonna be left with 2 sally ports, the locker room areas, the evidence area, and I believe the ADA bathroom in the front is still included.
So what's not gonna be done?
The offices, the roll call room, there was a large meeting room because they wanted, when you came in, they wanted to be able to have things for the public while also preventing people from getting into the police department for everybody's safety. Right now, if they were to have a meeting down there, or when they used to have meetings, you had to walk through the police department to get to their conference room. It's well, logistically, it's not a very good way to do it, and also from a safety standpoint. For individuals coming into the meeting, also for the officers who are in there, or any witnesses or any people who were arrested. So the idea was to kind of take that whole middle section and also to redo many of the offices. Locker rooms really are I would say is probably the #1 priority. They just, in terms of basic elements, one, there's no more female locker rooms. They did find one more by moving one of their canines out. So they did find one more locker room for the women, but that's it. They've maxed out that locker room. So you basically eliminated the ability to hire for all intents and purposes of half the population. And also the locker rooms they do have are, the best way I describe it when I've gone through is I would describe it as what you think it was middle school locker rooms. These are folks who have significant modern day equipment. There's no airflow, so you've got people out in August wearing jackets and other things under their gear, they're throwing them in a locker, close it up, and it's essentially all closed up. Modern day has the filtration area, they can actually, like, I won't say clean it, but you've got sweat and other things that come on. They have boot racks underneath.
State of the art for 1975. Before bulletproof vests or anything like that.
And you got boot drawers underneath, so you keep your boots and all of the whatever they walk through separated from the uniforms and such. As the modern day, I believe, I want to say these are 6 to 10 inch lockers, like middle school type lockers. And when they originally went through the design, when they walked through, they said modern day we got 24 inch lockers just because of the equipment. That's how far off it is. You don't have any more lockers for women, and the lockers we do have are just not close to having.
They're still like environmentally controlled lockers, because the bulletproof vests will break down over time, much quicker.
I'm just trying to get comfortable that we're just not trying to do taxpayers and avoid a referendum by doing what we've done. In what was a $6 million project, and now saying, well, this is really the project now, or really this is the project, we're just getting to the
I think we were under the 6 million when we took some of the silly stuff, like the carport back and stuff in there that was.
This project was redone, so we had the architectural cost estimate and another firm did it.
I remember.
And both-
Why you told me about it.
Both are in now at about 3.9 million. That includes the 300,000 that has already been appropriated for this additional architectural work, and it does include some contingencies. But anybody who's been involved with a construction project in town would recognize if you haven't done it recently, you're probably going to redo something. It seems like every time you break something open, just this wall, if you recall, ended just past the door. It was moved back a little ways. We actually had, when they did it, they found that there was asbestos in there. They had to treat it all off, close the door, and bring in a firm to do it. Just one wall. We're going to be doing downstairs. I can already tell you that there's problems with the old pistol range. We know we have to remediate some of that, and we know right out here, it actually leaks through where it connects. It actually leaks down the wall. It's not like flowing water, but it leaks. So both of those matters have to be taken care of, because more or less right underneath us, back that way, will be the locker rooms.
They did do a remediation on that pistol range years ago when they closed it down. I don't know how.
They did enough because there was a
Well,
complaint
it
at the
cost
time.
about quite a bit of money then.
Yeah, they did a complaint because there were fumes coming up from beneath. So they did some remediation, but they do expect to have to do more. I mean, they fired sure an amazing number of bullets into that thing over the years. You're gonna have lead and other stuff left. I can tell you that our bond counsel and our town attorney are both very cognizant of the charter and the rules. And are very keen on the fact that you can't just pull it fast from staying under the 5 million. But this new project is truly what the architect is focused on, and that was what the costing was on. And that's the costing that was provided to the state when the question came up. More or less, how far along are you? Do you have any good cost estimates? It's like a 6-page estimate. It's, if anybody came in with a more detailed project, I'd be surprised when they threw it in for all the different folks, the representatives in Hartford, because it's a very detailed cost estimate.
Just one final. Talked to Roche about the VNA report that Jerry and George were looking to get, you know. And Roche told me that they're still 60 days away from, you know, the report. So I'll just have Jerry follow up, with George follow up with Roche and find out. What I would like to do is, you know, August meeting, right, which is 60 days away. Maybe we can have a closeout for, you know, the current fiscal year and, you know, which with whatever stats or whatever, and present the month of July or whatever. I don't know. Jerry.
If we're shooting for August, we gotta move it because I'm on vacation.
Typically, August,
Usually cancel.
yeah, typically August has been a placeholder that if we need it for year-end transfer, just to move the audit along, because we have to. We will meet in September after we've submitted things to the auditors, so that's usually there. If I don't need any, we should cancel it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to them, you know, I don't know if he's being put off by putting a report together. I think we want to see a format for a report
Right.
before we,
We talked about.
before we start talking about, you know, what the numbers look like in it. So at least if we can work on what the data is gonna be, the data points, you know, and that shouldn't take 6 months to put together.
Okay.
We've already,
Do we have any idea what the final number is yet for losses?
Say that again?
Do we have any number, any approximate number as to what the final number will be for the losses for the VNA?
I just did a quick projection, Raul, and I'm coming up with 733,000 compared to a budget of compared to a budget of 679. The only reason why is because they're underspending their expenses by over $200,000. They're under the revenue of budget of 900, going to be around 630 for the revenue. That's been in the for a long time, but they're underspending their cost by $100,000. So that's what's helping me not as big of a loss.
Yeah, I was gonna say 700 to 750. That's what I would think.
Not at 750.
Well, at least they're consistent.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, not unless you guys are adjourned.
Okay, second,
Second.
favor? Aye.
There's no August meeting, man.
Come on, you'll be back.